Okay, so you're getting ready for a Sterile Services Technician interview. Talk about a cool behind-the-scenes role. Making sure all the medical instruments are completely spotless and ready to use. That's super important, right? Patient safety is on the line. But hey, no worries. This deep dive will help you walk into that interview feeling super prepared.
It's true, this role is all about being precise and paying attention to the tiniest details. It's behind the scenes, but your work directly affects patients' well-being. And don't forget, healthcare is always changing. New technologies, new procedures pop up all the time.
Yeah, and that's where RoleCatcher comes in. It's this awesome AI platform that helps you tailor your answers and get feedback just for this kind of job. We'll talk more about it later, but just know it's like having a secret weapon for your interview. For now, let's dive into some of those common interview questions they love to ask, starting with the classic. Can you describe your experience working in a sterile services environment?
This one is all about showing them you're familiar with the whole world of sterile processing. Think about your past jobs. What did you do that relates to decontamination, sterilization, or following those super strict protocols?
Yeah, because the interviewer wants to see that you really get the core principles of sterile services. So instead of just listing tasks you did, try to paint a picture of your experience for them. Like, did you work with any specific sterilization equipment? Were you in charge of keeping a clean room spotless? Give them solid examples that prove you understand what it takes.
And don't be afraid to put some numbers to your experience if you can. Saying something like, I used a steam sterilizer to sterilize around 50 surgical trays every day is much more powerful than just saying, you sterilized instruments?
Exactly. It shows you haven't just read about it, you've actually been hands-on. All right, let's move on to a question that really gets into the nitty-gritty. How do you ensure that instruments and equipment are properly sterilized?
This is where you get to show off your knowledge of all those sterilization methods. Steam, chemical, the whole shebang. But it's not just about listing them off. The interviewer wants to understand how you think about the process.
Right. Imagine you're giving them a mini crash course on sterilization. Walk them through each step. What are the quality checks you do? What are the crucial things you watch for during the process? Don't leave anything out.
You could even talk about the tricky parts of each sterilization method and how you've handled those. Like how you've prevented delicate instruments from getting damaged during steam sterilization, or how you've made sure those chemical sterilants get into every nook and cranny.
Oh, and here's a pro tip straight from the RoleCatcher Career Guide. Mention specific types of biological indicators you've used. They say interviewers love hearing candidates talk about the science behind sterilization.
Shows you're not just blindly following instructions, but that you understand why each step matters.
Okay, let's tackle another important one, all about keeping things safe and efficient. What steps do you take to maintain a clean and organized sterile services environment?
It might seem obvious, but this is absolutely crucial. We're talking about preventing infections and keeping everyone safe, patients and staff alike. So think about your everyday routine. What are those non-negotiable things you do when it comes to cleanliness and organization?
Right, like do you have a set cleaning schedule for different areas? What about spills or if something gets contaminated? What system do you use to keep all the instruments and supplies organized?
The interviewer wants to see how meticulous you are, how much you pay attention to detail. And it's not just about following the rules, it's about taking that extra step to keep things spotless.
Now, let's switch gears to a question that's all about how well you handle those instruments. How do you ensure that instruments and equipment are properly stored and labeled?
This one's all about preventing damage, contamination, and making sure nothing gets mixed up. Medical devices can be fragile and expensive, and how you store and label them is essential for keeping them in tip-top shape and keeping patients safe.
Think about all the different storage containers you use. How do you label them to show the sterilization date, what's inside, and any special instructions? Do you use any color coding to tell different types of instruments apart?
It's all about showcasing your understanding of best practices and that you're committed to keeping a really organized and efficient storage system. Remember, if an instrument ends up in the wrong place, it can cause delays in surgery or even put a patient at risk.
Okay, let's move on to something that tests your problem-solving skills. Can you describe a time when you had to troubleshoot a problem with a piece of sterilization equipment?
This is a classic one they love to ask. It's about seeing how you handle pressure and use your critical thinking to solve problems.
And don't just jump to the solution. Take them through your thought process. What were the first signs that something was wrong? How did you figure out what the issue was?
Yeah.
Did you have to check any manuals or anything?
Exactly. And most importantly, what happened in the end? Did you manage to fix it? And what did you learn from the whole experience?
This is your chance to highlight your technical know-how and how you can stay calm when things get stressful. Remember, they want to see that you can think on your feet and take initiative to solve problems.
All right, let's talk about a question that really focuses on your commitment to safety. How do you ensure that you are following all relevant safety protocols and guidelines?
This one's a must, right? Safety is absolutely critical in sterile services, and the interviewer wants to know that you take it seriously. So tell them about the specific protocols you follow when handling dangerous materials, using personal protective equipment, or getting rid of contaminated waste.
Don't just mention general guidelines, be specific. Talk about the types of gloves you wear, the exact decontamination steps you take, and how you make sure there's proper ventilation.
And this is where mentioning any specialized safety training you've had can really make you stand out. Do you have any certifications related to infection control or handling hazardous materials? Let them know.
It shows you're dedicated to staying up to date on the latest safety practices and that you care about creating a safe working environment for yourself and everyone around you.
Now, let's tackle a question about your organizational skills. How do you prioritize your workload when faced with multiple competing priorities?
Yeah, sterile services can be really fast-paced, and you'll often have to juggle lots of tasks at the same time. The interviewer wants to know how you handle that pressure and make sure everything gets done right and on time.
So tell them about your system for prioritizing. Do you use a to-do list, a specific software program, or do you have a way of figuring out in your head which tasks are the most urgent?
And give them a real-life example of a time you successfully handled multiple priorities. What were some of the challenges you faced, and how did you overcome them?
This is your chance to show off how organized you are and how you stay calm under pressure. Remember, they want to see that you can handle the demands of the job without getting overwhelmed.
Okay, moving on to a question that explores your people skills. How do you handle conflicts or disagreements with colleagues or superiors?
Because, let's face it, conflict happens in every workplace, and sterile services is no different. The interviewer wants to know how you approach these situations, and if you can stay professional and composed even when things get tense.
This is another great opportunity to use the STAR method to share a real example. Think about a time when you had a conflict with a coworker or your boss. What was going on? What steps did you take to resolve the conflict? And what was the outcome?
The key here is to focus on your communication and problem-solving skills. Did you really listen to the other person's perspective? Did you try to find a compromise or a solution that worked for everyone involved?
Right. They want to see that you can handle conflict in a constructive way and maintain a positive working relationship even when there are disagreements. All right, let's wrap up this section with a question that assesses how adaptable you are. Can you describe a time when you had to adapt to a new or unfamiliar process or procedure?
Because the healthcare field is constantly evolving, right? And sterile services is no exception. New technologies, procedures, and regulations are popping up all the time. The interviewer wants to see that you're willing and able to learn new things and adjust to changes.
So think of a time when you had to learn to use a new piece of equipment, master a new sterilization method, or adjust to a change in protocol. What were some of the challenges you faced? How did you approach learning the new stuff?
And most importantly, how did you successfully implement that new process or procedure?
This is your chance to highlight your willingness to learn, your ability to adapt to new situations, and your commitment to constantly improving.
All right, so now you've got a solid foundation for tackling those interview questions. But before we move on to more advanced techniques and strategies, let's take a minute to see how RoleCatcher can really boost your preparation.
Remember that AI magic we mentioned earlier? Well, RoleCatcher uses artificial intelligence to help you fine-tune your answers and get feedback that's specifically designed for this job role.
It's like having your own personal interview coach right there in your pocket.
Yeah, you can actually paste the job description right into RoleCatcher, and it'll analyze it. It looks for the keywords, the skills they emphasize, even the tone of the writing.
Whoa. And then, based on your resume and experience, it suggests how to phrase your answers to hit those exact points they're looking for.
Exactly. It's like having someone on the inside who knows precisely what they want to hear.
And you said it gives you feedback too.
You got it. You can type or even record yourself answering a question. RoleCatcher analyzes your word choice, how concise you are, even things like your body language if you're on video. Then it gives you tips to make your answers even better.
So it's not just giving generic advice. It's like tailored for this specific interview. That's amazing. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. We've tackled some of those common interview questions and explored how RoleCatcher can help you craft winning responses.
But we're just getting started. In Part 2, we'll go even deeper into some advanced interview strategies, including how to handle those tricky behavioral questions and how to make a lasting impression on the interviewer. Welcome back. Ready to dive deeper into those interview techniques that'll help you really shine? Remember, you want to show them you're not just capable, but that you're passionate about this work.
Exactly. Sterile processing isn't just about going through the motions. It's about being a real guardian of patient safety. And let that dedication come across in your answers. Now, the RoleCatcher Career Guide had some interesting things to say about career paths in this field.
Absolutely. You might start as a technician, sure, but there are so many ways to move up. Leadership roles, specializing in areas like endoscopy or cardiology, even moving into education.
Oh, cool. So how do we show that kind of forward thinking in the interview?
Well, when they ask about your goals, weave in that eagerness to learn and grow within sterile processing. Mention any professional development you've done, or organizations like IH, CSMM that offer those advanced certifications.
It's like saying, hire me now, but know that I'm not stopping there. I'm all in on becoming even better. Okay, back to those curveball questions interviewers love to throw. What about salary expectations? That one always makes people nervous.
Research is your best friend. Sites like Glassdoor or Salary.com can give you a good idea of the going rate in your area. And don't be afraid to ask about their budget early on. Saves everyone time if you're not on the same page.
And when it comes to numbers, know your worth. You're bringing meticulousness, problem solving, and a serious commitment to safety to the table. Those things deserve fair compensation. Another tough one is, tell me about a time you made a mistake. Nobody's perfect, so how do we handle that honestly? Pick a mistake, sure, but focus on what you learned from it. Maybe you messed up a label once, but it pushed you to create a double-check system that you now teach to others. Turn that negative into a positive, showing how you grew.
It's just self-awareness, and that you're all about continuous improvement, which are huge GE pluses in sterile processing where precision is everything. Okay, what about the classic strengths and weaknesses question? Any tips beyond the usual I'm a perfectionist trap?
For strengths, connect them directly to the job. Something like, my attention to detail is so strong, I once spotted a tiny crack in an instrument that everyone else missed. And for weaknesses, choose something you're actively working on, like, I used to get flustered under pressure, but I've been using mindfulness techniques and I'm handling multiple tasks much better now.
So, honesty, but always framed in a way that shows you're proactive. Love it. Okay, the dreaded why us question. Why are you interested in this facility? How do we go beyond generic compliments?
Do your research. Their website, news articles, see if any staff have published research. Maybe they're known for a specific specialty or have won awards for their sterile processing department. Mention that stuff.
It shows you didn't just apply to every place under the sun. You see something special in them. Okay, more about RoleCatcher. You mentioned it helps tailor answers. How does that actually work?
Picture this. You paste the job description into RoleCatcher. Its AI gets to work analyzing the key words, the skills they really emphasize, even the tone of the writing. Then, using your resume and experience, it suggests how to phrase your answers to hit those exact points.
Whoa, it's like having a secret agent inside telling you exactly what they want to hear, and you said it gives feedback too.
Exactly. You can type or even record yourself answering a question. RoleCatcher analyzes everything, your words, how concise you are, even your body language if you're on video. Then it gives you personalized tips to make it even stronger.
So it's not just general advice, it's tailored to this interview. That's amazing. But beyond the tech, any overall tips for the interview itself, whether it's in person or virtual?
First impressions are everything. Dress professionally, even if it's online. Arrive early, or if it's virtual, test your tech beforehand. Make sure you have a copy of your resume handy to reference your accomplishments.
And smile. Even if you're nervous, let your passion for the work show. Oh, and have a few questions ready for them.
Absolutely. Ask about team dynamics, professional development opportunities, maybe how the facility stays up to date on the latest sterilization tech. It shows you're engaged and thinking long-term.
It's about showing you're not just looking for any job, you're looking for the right fit where you can really thrive. Okay, we've covered a ton about interview prep. But before we wrap up, let's shift gears and talk about what it's really like to be a sterile services technician.
We've talked skills, attention to detail, safety, but there's a human side to this work too, and it's incredibly rewarding. You're on a team that directly affects how patients do.
You're playing a crucial role in making sure surgeries and procedures can happen safely and without a hitch.
Even though you're often behind the scenes, you know your work makes a real difference in people's lives.
It's knowing you're part of something bigger than yourself. And that's a powerful feeling. Okay, before we go to the final part of this deep dive, let's take a second to think about what we've learned. We've covered everything from those core responsibilities to tackling the tough interview questions.
We talked about using the STAR method to tell compelling stories that showcase your skills and experience.
And we even introduced you to RoleCatcher, your AI-powered interview buddy that can help you tailor your answers and get personalized feedback.
But there's more to come. In part 3, we'll wrap up with some final tips on acing that interview and making a lasting impression on the hiring manager.
Okay, welcome back. This is the final part of our Sterile Services Technician interview deep dive. You've got the knowledge, you've practiced, you've even got RoleCatcher ready to help. Let's talk about those finishing touches that'll make you a star candidate.
It's like we've prepped those instruments, run all the sterilization cycles, but now it's time for that super careful quality check before they go into surgery.
I love that analogy. So, what can bump a candidate from good to amazing in the eyes of the interviewer?
Beyond just knowing the right answers, think about how you're coming across. Are you enthusiastic but still professional? Are you really listening and having a back-and-forth conversation?
The RoleCatcher Career Guide really stresses those soft skills, the personality stuff, that shows you'll be a great team player.
For sure. Highlight your communication skills. How well can you explain complicated procedures? Are you a good listener, really understanding what your colleagues need?
And teamwork is huge. Maybe you got a story about working together to make a process better at a previous job. Or how you're always willing to help, even with things that aren't technically your job.
It shows you're not just there to punch in and out. You're invested in the whole team's success and ultimately the well-being of the patients.
Okay, let's talk practical stuff. Any tips for the interview day itself, in person or virtual?
Be prepared. If it's in person, plan your route. Think about traffic, parking. Get there 10-15 minutes early. For virtual, test everything: internet, camera, mic, and find a quiet spot with good lighting.
What about first impressions? What's the dress code these days?
Professional is always a good bet, even online. Shows you're taking it seriously, at least business casual. A nice shirt or blouse, tidy hair, and make sure your background isn't distracting.
It's showing respect for their time, proving you're ready for a professional setting. Now, we talked about answering their questions, but what about asking them some?
Having a few smart questions ready shows you're curious and engaged. Don't ask things you could easily find online, like basic job duties. Dig a little deeper.
Like maybe ask about professional development opportunities within the department, or how the facility's keeping up with new sterilization technologies.
Yeah, or about their team culture, what they see as the biggest challenges and rewards of working in their sterile processing department.
It shows you're not just looking for any job, but a place to learn, contribute, and grow. All right, we've reached the end of our deep dive, but we want to leave you with one final thought as you head into that interview. Think about this. What is it about being a sterile services technician that really speaks to you?
Is it the precision, the problem solving, knowing you're making a difference behind the scenes for those patients? Tap into that, let it shine through. That's what will make you stand out.
You've got this. You've put in the work, you've practiced, you're ready to impress. Go in there confident, knowing you're prepared to show your passion for sterile processing and patient safety. And as you start this journey, keep learning, keep growing, and never forget how important your role is in healthcare. That's all for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, stay curious, stay driven, and good luck with that interview.